Welcome back to part two of this interview with Garrett Ziegler on Just Saying. I found the conversation with him fascinating in the part one, but I would like to reiterate my overall purpose in interviewing him is to, in some way, get the attention of those in power in the inner circle of President Trump to include him and people like him on his transition team. Because Garrett knows the players. He was in the White House. He saw who was good, who was bad, and he has the ability to vet. And not only that, research. He is good at that. So welcome back, Garrett.
Thank you for this opportunity.
You are a veteran now at a very young age of lawfare. And you've experienced it. You've seen how ridiculous it can be and how specious the lawsuits that cost you time, money, and effort can be a hard blow for a private citizen to endure. And so I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Going forward, how do you address that and get the other side to stop doing it as a weapon of the judicial system, weaponizing?
Yeah, I've thought about this for hours, going on days. I think there's a couple of options. The good news is I don't think you have to do all of them. If you do all of them, it will for sure solve the problem, but just doing a couple. And I have three things. Number one, on the American right writ large, the public interest law firms are not taking on all the pro bono cases they could. I'll give you a concrete example. There are a lot of public interest law firms on the right doing environmental work, challenging the Sierra Club and other groups that are egregious, don't get me wrong, but they have been reticent to, for example, represent people in front of the January 6th committee, which I was subpoenaed. It cost me $15,000 to sit in front of them and politely and constitutionally decline to answer their egregious and far-reaching questions
And
about a riot that I had
that was
nothing
in
to do with.
closed doors, wasn't it?
Well, it was closed doors in the sense that the public couldn't attend, but Adam Schiff attended. The reason why they didn't release the video of me is because I didn't answer any of their questions. Although they did release the deposition transcript of me just saying that I'm invoking my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment. So a couple of steps that can be taken. Number one, we need to make a complete list of all public interest law firms on the right. What do I mean by that? Liberty Counsel, lawyers who work for C3s or C4s in certain scenarios.
Article 3 project, Mike Davis is
Yes, there is not a single, and I looked for this, there's not a single comprehensive list of those groups out there. That list needs to be made. It's not been made because it's what a lot of people consider grunt work. Grunt work is what I specialize in. Our book on the laptop is considered by many to be grunt work. What does that mean? I called each and every prostitute, each and every pimp, and every business partner on the Biden laptop that we had in our report. Over hundreds of them. I'm the only person from my zip code to ever speak to over 100 prostitutes in their life. I can promise you that.
over
And
100 prosecutors.
no, prostitutes.
Oh,
Yeah. So what we
would
did was
make the front page in most jurisdictions.
we hit the pavement, and that's what this requires. So we need a complete rundown of everybody on the right who's running a legal charity, and then match those people up with people who are clearly the victim of lawfare. What does this do? It takes the ability to financially ruin somebody out of the equation. That is a large part of the motive of this lawfare, is to financially ruin people. If you take that off the chessboard, I think 60% of these cases go away. Hunters will go away once he realizes that they cannot financially ruin me. I've stayed on now for 18 months because of the army of people, meaning the amount of average donation to our legal defense fund is not great, but guess what? It doesn't have to be when the denominator of number of persons is great. And that's what we've done. We've spread out the donor base of Marco Polo nationwide to, almost 10,000 people now. And so even if 10,000 people give $20, that's a lot of money. So if you
It's
take,
good funding.
yes, if you take the financial ruin option off of their chessboard, half of these will fall away. The second option is, or not the second option, but the second step rather, is like you said, to find lawyers on the right who will not target them per se, but just do what justice requires, which is filing cases back on them. I'm in agreement with you that we have to start doing to them what they're doing to us. The key difference is we have to have legitimate causes of action. Meaning, if somebody brings a frivolous suit against you and you bring a suit against them, you can bring a suit for unjust prosecution, and that is a just measure that you've taken in response to their unjust action. So
I would say most of the people on the J6 prisoner list would have a cause of action for that.
I agree completely. Brady violations galore. Matthew Graves, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, you know him. His wife is a far left activist. He should have been recused out of so many cases.
But
And another part of the lawfare is the judges. So we have a guy named Hernan Vera. We call him Hernan Merchan. He's a district court judge in the Central District of California. He's a Marxist. He's a La Raza guy. Had Kamala speak at his nonprofit called Public Counsel while he was the CEO. We just found that out. The only way to get rid of the lawfare from the judge's perspective, or looking at the judges, is impeachment. I loathe AOC. I think she's a clown. But guess what? She stopped complaining and put her nose to the grindstone and actually filed, or attempted to file, articles of impeachment against Clarence Thompson. I think they're preposterous.
Clarence
Okay?
Thomas?
Yes, but she is hitting on a key point, which is the right, the elected officials specifically, bloviate constantly, but they don't even try to impeach people. These federal district court judges, a large portion of them have to be impeached. This is a remedy completely constitutional. So what I call conservatards shouldn't be complaining. We have a remedy to get rid of corrupt justices. You impeach them. And we can have, the conservatards can argue about whether or not their conduct warrants impeachment. That is a good argument to have,
I can
right?
think of two people right off the bat.
Right off the bat. And now
Merchan
we have
and
control of
Erdogan.
the Senate. So 66 votes, federal judge is gone. Remember, these people are for life. Senior status, they're still milking in about $240 a year on senior status. And some of these senior status judges don't even have any cases. So $250,000 a year to be a leftist. And those senior judges have a say in who the magistrate judges are. So another way to get rid of the lawfare, and I love that you brought this point up because I never get asked these types of questions, is the magistrate judges. We need to take a hard look at abolishing magistrate judges, because a lot of these tyrannical acts that Joey's people have perpetrated on the right, and here's one concrete example. All of the search warrants for James O'Keefe and the other folks at Project Veritas were approved, the initial ones, by magistrate judges. These corrupt assistant U.S. attorneys purposely put stuff in front of left-wing magistrate judges. And guess what? That person's not been approved by the Senate. It's like, if somebody's going to put their boot, the only positive thing I can say about Hernan Vera is at least he was approved by the U.S. Senate. Now, it took him 3 times to do so. And it was 51 to 4, it was 51 to 48. Joey, his nomination was returned twice to Joey. That's how corrupt our case is. The plaintiff's daddy had to appoint the judge 3 times, and they got him through 51-48. 90 days after he gets put on the bench, he gets randomly assigned our case.
Wasn't the raid on Mar-a-Lago authorized by a magistrate judge?
Precisely. I was one of the few people to bring that up. Everybody was talking about his Epstein connections, and those are plenty. Bruce Reinhardt. The fact that that guy is still a magistrate judge, and every argument I try to go against the best argument of our opposition. It's one of the few things I learned from Abraham Lincoln when he was. In fact, Abraham Lincoln, although he didn't argue cases in my county, he argued cases in the county north of me, in Illinois. I'm sitting in central Illinois right now. One of the few things that Lincoln talked about his law life was your first argument should be the best argument of your opposition. Take that one first, and then the jury will get, you'll coax the jury. You take the best argument first, and by the end, you're just dominating him. And the best argument for magistrate judges is that they're only appointed by people who have already been Senate confirmed, right? The district judges get in a huddle and they vote on a panel of nominees for magistrate judge. But that's not the same thing. Magistrate judges have the ability to sign off on a raid of your home. I don't want those district court judges delegating that judgment. I think if a federal judge can order the raid of your home, they need to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And so what we need to do is increase the number of district court judges, because the district court judges always say we have too big of a caseload. First of all, I think most of them are lazy. And even if that's true, even if we accept their argument, there's no reason why we couldn't nominate and confirm 30 more district court judges.
Well, I will tell you also from having some experience in law, magistrate judges basically regard themselves, now in my opinion only, okay, as rubber stamps for the authority asking. In other words, if it's the police department that they need to keep their job, if it's the district attorney that they know that if they oppose them, their career will be limited. Magistrate judges play the field of politics in the decisions they make. They don't look at the equities or the justice so much. That's my experience. I'm only
You said it better than me. And I'm looking at this from the outside. I applied to law school. I was going to go, and then we had our first baby, and I'm doing everything now that I wanted to do, and I'm probably not going to go. So I have an interest in law, but I'm not an attorney. However, I've looked at what the AUSAs and the SDNY did. And I'm going to go back to that example for just a second. The AUSAs, on the different subpoenas that they were seeking, from their emails to the search of their homes, they're very clever. I've never accused them of being stupid in the SDNY. I've accused them of being evil. What Mitzi Steiner did was she and her colleagues went to different magistrate judges for different warrants, so that the same judge didn't realize how much of an egregious investigation they were doing on journalists. That's the key thing. They violated the DOJ's internal manual because they didn't get it approved by headquarters to seize journalistic material. So
O'Keefe is a unique individual in that regard. Most journalists faced with those sort of things like he was experiencing and you're experiencing would turn and say, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, they wuss out.
Yeah,
you have to be willing to lose everything.
Which is one of the intents. And the other is a penalty effect that you will not survive, and they know it, a la Rudy Giuliani. He may survive it, but what they did to him, to me, is egregious to do to an 80-year-old with his background.
I agree completely. And the American right should have been setting him up with pro bono attorneys. For example,
competent ones.
Yes, competent ones. These, and I'll call them, and this is my opinion, not yours, but these hood rats from Georgia who are suing him, they have Protect Democracy representing them. They're not paying legal fees. They're not paying. No. They're not paying Wilkie and Farr on 3rd Avenue.
Isn't that Reid Hoffman that's involved there?
Exactly. So our opposition realizes that normal folk, when they want to achieve an objective through a normal person, they don't sack those people in Georgia with $700,000 of legal fees. First of all, nobody would extend them credit. Like Hunter Biden, he gets $18 million in credit, free credit, interest free. He has $18 million in legal bills right now to try to force me out of the game. So the left does it, but then on the right,
nothing to lose.
Yeah, but then on the right, we don't support somebody like Rudy Giuliani. So in his bankruptcy case, one of the creditors has $1.5 million in legal fees that they want Rudy to pay. So this is a deep cancer on the right. Trump won not because of this, but despite this. He called out this cancer on the right, both in the 2016 campaign and the 2024. In the primary, all of the cancerous elements on the American right were opposing him in 2024.
Now,
Same
to
like in
Trump's,
2016.
I am sorry that Trump went this direction, but Rudy Giuliani, I understand from an interview he did recently, was one of the first that stepped into the Oval Office in 2016 and asked for permission to personally prosecute Hillary, and was
Should have
turned
done
down.
it.
Okay. And back then, I wrote an article for Town Hall that said, memo to Trump, prosecute Hillary or perish. And that was before it was unveiled. Because
You were prescient.
I've had experience with the federal government and litigating with them. And if you find a hole in the wall that they didn't know about, you can count on them fixing it before the end of the case. And all of a sudden you're out in the floodwaters and everybody else is safe. He did not follow that, unfortunately, and I think it's to his chagrin today, because she was the one that for over 4 years knew that the Russian hoax was a hoax created by her people and sat silent and
And
let the
in part,
Mueller investigation go through. What misery.
Yes.
And knowingly did that. That to me, in my view, would be in the realm of treason, trying to unseat and unsettle and displace a sitting president with a falsity, a fraudulent thing. And, let's put it this way, she hasn't stopped today. And neither have others. Especially, I would say, one of the busiest people in Washington, D.C. today is Merrick Garland. And ordering people to look through the files and see what needs to be removed. Because they prosecute Steve Bannon, but he does the same thing and he says, no, we're not going to do that with me. They were going to send him to prison for 4 months, but what I do gets immunity. And so what you're saying is, I'm saying that the attorneys are bad enough, but it's the judges that let this happen and everybody bypasses it. And when a judge is involved, the American public has been trained over time to think where a judge is involved, that's justice working. And all you have to do is listen to Alina Habba tell you you're wrong. And you've seen that.
Yes.
So
and the Constitution and the wisdom of the founders provides us a remedy. And we shouldn't wait until a bribery case gets unveiled. Just in a state court judge in Pennsylvania, there was this scandal called Cash for Kids, where he was getting a kickback for placing certain kids in foster care. If you look up Cash for Kids Pennsylvania, it's a whole scandal. I'm not saying that a federal judge today is involved in that type of thing, but the scale is the same, and it's right under our nose. I think in God and his infinite wisdom is revealing that to us and letting the tens of millions of Americans who voted for Trump understand that through Merchan and Engoron. And hopefully we'll get a great awakening of the need to cleanse out the judiciary. And all we're asking for is justice. So what you're saying about Hillary, it's not, the Politico is going to call it vengeful, and Trump is on it.
Prosecuting your political enemies.
We're about justice. Hillary obviously committed federal crimes. She was not prosecuted because of who her husband is. That is unjust. So we have to rectify that situation. The good argument, or the sophisticated argument, is whether or not the statute of limitations has run. But we all need to get on the same page that we are going to effectuate justice regardless of somebody's last name. That's why the push for Hunter Biden to be commuted or pardoned is preposterous. He's committed literally hundreds of felonies, from solicitation to possession to FARA violations to money laundering. And for him to get out of it because of who his last name is. I'm not saying, Joe has the power to pardon him. It's broad. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a unitary executive guy. The president has the power to pardon all prior conduct. He can't pardon future conduct, and he can even
Nor
pardon.
can he pardon state crimes, I believe.
Yes, but he can. I'm talking about at the federal level. He can even pardon uncharged crimes, right? So I agree that Joe has that power. I'm talking about people who are now calling on Donald Trump to issue a commutation or pardon to Hunter Biden for what? That would be a manifest injustice. Manifest, knowing that they think he's a fascist and everything else, and they're unrepentant. He's an unrepentant criminal, and our book lays that out. And so,
Have you ever gotten any sense that Hunter Biden regrets setting up a scenario where over 400,000 Ukrainian young men have died?
No, and in fact, he thinks this is all a Russian plant. He was just at a party last weekend. The New York Post had a story on this of him complaining about the 18 million he owes his attorneys and how this is all a Russian plant. There's no introspection with these people. There's nothing going on there. So the idea that he's deserving of mercy is a joke. And
well, we need to get over that, because doing the right thing sometimes is not comfortable, and it's painful, in fact.
Yes.
But if you don't do it, you're complicit in it.
Precisely.
Isn't that true? Wasn't that
Hunter's never been held accountable for anything. Part of the reason why Joe is such a terrible parent is because Hunter was never held accountable for anything. If he doesn't get pardoned or commuted, it'll be the first time that he'll have to live with the consequences of his actions, something that most normal people get hit with at 20, 25, 30. He's breezed through the whole thing. Why? Because of a couple things. The tragedy of his mother has inhibited everybody from executing justice upon him. They've given him a free pass because of the tragedy of losing his mother, his entire existence. And he's banking on that now. A 54-year-old was going to present at trial. He wanted to present the car wreck as a 2-year-old as a reason for his felonious activity. That was something that the judge shot down, thank God, Judge Mark Scarsey from the Central District of California. But one of Hunter's key defenses was going to be something that occurred as a 2-year-old is affecting him now as a 50-year-old. This is obscene. He's acting like a man-child. So the adults in the room, to use a phrase from the left, and that's what we are, the adults in the room have to say, no, we're not going to let you act like a man-child. You're not going to get out of this because of who your daddy is. That has helped you for decades, but that stops here. And, we'll put you in California. This is what justice, would require. The leniency that Hunter gets is that he gets to go to California for prison. Put him in Lompoc for 6 years, and he gets to, smell the ocean a little bit. That is mercy.
Well, I would ask, whatever his defenses are, ask the one question: would that apply to the guy, same crime, to the guy who you arrest in Compton?
Precisely. Some of Hunter's drug dealers have spent more time than him. We tracked a guy in Delaware, and we reached out to AUSA. They wouldn't return my call. His name is Eladio Otero, and he was one of Hunter's crack dealers in Delaware. And he spent 2 years in prison during Joe's term, and Hunter didn't get anything. So they have already he pled guilty. His name's Eladio Otero, Otero. You can go look his case up in the federal court. And we reached out to the AUSA and said, hey, you're prosecuting somebody selectively. If you're going to go after Eladio, why wouldn't you go after the person buying cocaine from him? We have videos of Hunter Biden and photos of him smoking crack, and black guys get pinched all the time for this behavior, all the time. So why doesn't Hunter get arrested for possession and distribution?
Wasn't Mayor Barry from Washington, D.C. Convicted for exactly that?
Precisely, and Hunter admits to his then psychiatrist on a phone call that he smoked crack with Marion Barry in the bathroom of a bar in Georgetown when he was a senior in college at Georgetown. So not only did
another thing they're doing is they're saying everybody has had somebody in the family addicted to drugs or alcohol, and it's hard to get through, but he's gotten through it. Let's give him a pass.
Those people that they're alluding to and their families have been held accountable. Again, we're not damning Hunter to hell, but on this side of heaven, we have to be big boys and big girls. And if you commit a crime, you have to suffer the consequences. Now, again, Joey, through his mail-in ballots, became the president. So he does have power. Either pardon him, but don't have it both ways. They should be intellectually honest and say, you know what, he did all that, but I'm pardoning my son. Period. But don't pardon him and then say he didn't do anything wrong. Right? That's sophistry. Adults shouldn't accept that. So they can't have it both ways.
Knowing what you know, that in and of itself would have been a crime, and will be a crime if he is pardoned. A crime on Joe Biden's part, if not legally, morally. And I would say, okay, so I love your idea of looking at the judges that are rubber stamping the Department of Justice on many of the cases they're trying. Because if you were to face it, if I were to face it, it would have a different effect than if Joe or Hunter face it. Also, where do you, I would like to ask you, have you ever had thoughts about an early morning visit? Because I have, and I'm nobody. But I see him showing up at a lot of nobody's homes. And it's intended to have a chilling effect. Have they tried to chill you in that regard?
Yes, but it was an afternoon visit. They've not conducted any raids, but I've been, and my family has been visited by the Secret Service, where we've had a whistleblower within the Department of Justice come to us and show us internal screenshots of chat logs about us. So there's an active DOJ investigation into me and my group for doxing. We've been visited by the Secret Service multiple times, called. My parents, my wife has been called by the Secret Service. They want to know about my, quote, unusual interest in the Biden family. We FOIA'd, and that was the response, that we have an unusual interest.
Well, my question is, why don't we have an unusual national interest in what they have all done?
That's what I've been trying to inculcate. And they don't like it.
That's exactly why I want Garrett Ziegler to be on the transition team to help guide them away from the people that just say, let's bygones be bygones and let's move forward and not be unburdened by what has been.
Well, that's not justice.
No,
that's not justice. And I would be honored to be on the transition team. As a nerd, my first piece of advice would be to map all of these agencies out. It's such a behemoth project, 4,000 people, hundreds of entities. Most people don't even know the names of all these entities, let alone which personnel would be best suited to staff them. So what I was pushing for during the first term was to have an electronic org chart that was updated every single day, and you could zoom in at the granular staff level of all these agencies. He's got to hire 4,000 people. There's over 100 agencies. You've got to be able to see it to understand how to form the correct government. Personnel was the biggest error from term number one. We have to do something different. To not be insane, we have to do something different to expect a different result. I am calling for them to have it clearly mapped out. And I don't think this is occurring right now. And I want to effectuate that.
Is not Charlie Kirk looking at that seriously? Charlie
I don't know.
Or Kash Patel, that whole group, I know have mentioned it. Who is in charge of it's going to determine its direction. I personally know a U.S. attorney that's been there for years that hates Trump's guts. And the fact that he can stay in I know.
In New Mexico?
No, in California. And
I'd love to know the name so he can leave on January 21st.
Well, I will tell you the name when we conclude here. As much as I hate lawfare, I hate defamation suits also. And anyway, Garrett, thank you.
Thank you
Anytime
for your
that
time.
you feel that there's anything that you would like to discuss with our subscribers, you are definitely invited back anytime that you think it's important.
Thank you for your time.
Because your judgment floats with us. And thank you for being here at Just Saying.